Well, welcome everyone. Yeah. All right. We are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, I want to go ahead and get started so we're not holding up time. I want to welcome you to Thriving in ADHD Parenting. And I am your host today, Tawana Wiggins. And I'll do some more formal introduction as we go along, but I do want to go ahead and get started here. So, all right, let's just really dive right in because we only have a little bit of time here. But let's get real. Gentle parenting, that's what we're talking about today, and why our kids reject gentle parenting. And it really sounds great on paper, right? Like less yelling, fewer meltdowns, more connection. But if you've tried it, you've probably had that moment where you look at your kid and your kid looks at you and they're like, oh, you're being real soft today. All right, cool, bet. It's my chance to do whatever I want, run all over you, and my chance to get away with anything, right? And that's probably going through your mind as you're doing it and not doing it with confidence because you're thinking, oh, shoot, this kid has one up and is about to get the win. And it's frustrating because you want to do better for your kids, but you're stuck really wondering, why is this so hard? And why doesn't it feel natural for either of us? Why are we struggling with something that should be so good, right? Well, today we're going to dig into the why. By the end of this session, you're going to leave with clarity, some light bulb moments, and some actionable steps to take control of your parenting journey. So, here's what I want you to do. I want you to grab your favorite drink, your notebook, and be ready to take some notes and dive in. Now, as I mentioned, I'm Tawana. I'm your host here today. I am the CEO and founder of TL Collaborative Coaching and Consulting, where my focus is on empowering moms of ADHD children, to turn challenges into triumphs and create nurturing spaces, environments for them and their children. I'm also a mom. I have three beautiful children, two adults, and one who's 10 and still at home. And I am an educator by trade with 20 years experience, 20 plus years experience in education, from teaching to school leadership and principalness is not even a thing, principalship, and leading a school as the COO, and now the leader of my organization, and I'm an empowerment coach. And so I'll be your guide here today as we go on this journey. Today, we're diving into some truths about parenting. We're going to debunk some myths and empowering you with some strategies that will transform your experience as part of being a parent. So let's get started as I navigate us through this journey. All right, so let me just officially welcome you to this masterclass. And this is an 8-part series. So this is masterclass 1. And I am excited to have you here because this conversation is a game changer. Yes, my focus is on moms who are raising children ADHD because that was my conduit to seeing the world different in my parenting and in my leadership. But this is for moms in general. Um, so these tools and strategies could work all the way around. But my conduit was the fact that I'm raising a child with ADHD, and that helps me to shift my focus some. But all are welcome to all sessions. So I am just really excited about this game changing conversation that we're going to have here today. We are going to cover a couple of things. Why gentle parenting feels like it's not working, and why there's so much stigma in social media and everywhere about it, and where it's being laughed at, really. And we're also going to cover the barriers getting in your way. And spoiler alert, it's not your kid. I know oftentimes we're like, hey, do y'all see this kid kidding the best way they know how to kid when I just said no or stop it? And we're also going to cover how you can overcome these barriers to create a stronger and more connected relationship with your child or your children. So, I want to give you a heads up. My background in teaching is science and psychology, and so I'm going to focus some of the part on the science behind it. It's going to be some real talk and definitely some space where you can engage in some laughter because you will identify with these stories and then really reflect and grow together. So if that sounds good, we're going to go ahead and go on. Now, if you have questions, you can feel free to drop them in the chat. If you're watching this on the replay, I will answer those. Excuse me. You can also visit my website at www. Well, there's no www. It's tlcollaborative.podia.com. It is on the screen somewhere, or at least it will be. And in that, you will be able to. Um, oh, here we go. I'm going to drop it in the chat here so that if you're watching on the replay or if you're watching now, you'll be able to see it. Um, and there you can drop your questions there in the feedback section or the Q&A section, but I will drop my website in the chat. And so it's there for you all. And you'll see it on the screen as we go through also. All right. So let's go ahead and really dive deeper into these sections that I said that we're going to cover today. So, our goal today is focused on connection over perfection. We have been told so many times that we have to get it right, that you're not doing it right, that you're not doing it well. And truth be told, nobody is. Like, I want to start just by taking some pressure off of that. Parenting isn't about being perfect. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is nailing it 100% of the time because nobody got a handbook for this thing we call motherhood and this thing we call parenting. We are all out here just trial and erroring it. And so don't let the Instagrammers and the TikTokers fool you. Our goal is simple. We're focusing on connection. When you build connection, you build trust. And when your child trusts you, they're more likely to want to cooperate, listen, and just grow alongside with you. Now, of course, there are some neurological things that happen in their brain as they go through puberty and childhood where they begin to act like they don't trust you, even though nothing you've ever done has swayed them any other type of way or given them reason not to trust you. But overall, trust. Think about it. How many people are you engaged with that you don't trust? Trust is the key factor before making connections. People don't care what you know until they know that you care, and that includes your children. So if you've been caught in a cycle of guilt or feeling like you're failing, just take a deep breath. This is about progress over perfection. We are going to all fall down as long as we get back up. Parenting is a journey, and it is something that you do not get to do perfectly because people are peopling, you are parenting, and you are learning along the way. So parenting is more than just a role. Here I place it as it is. You do it through faith. You are leaning on your faith to be able to parent. So just like in Psalms 23, it reminds us that just as God is our shepherd, providing all we need, we have been equipped to shepherd our children. If God gave you the job, he gave you what you need to succeed. He gave you that child. Therefore, there is something in you that will allow you to parent that child well and shepherd over that child well. You have to dig it out and you have to rely on faith and guidance to be able to do that, but it's in there and it's there for your child. So it's like a puzzle piece. So let's just hold on to that as we're moving forward. There's going to be things that I say and you're like, wait a minute, I did not do that, or ooh, but don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up at all. And I am not saying this to say that I have done it well. I'm learning and growing as we go along this, and I'm just sharing the things with you that I have learned in the process of parenting and have learned in the process of my education and linking the two together. One thing in the says it is one thing to read it in the book, but it's one thing to apply it in life. And with almost 30 years experience as parenting, I am not the perfectionist. I am not the expert, but I do have some experience. So let's go ahead and just continue here. Alrighty. So Gentle parenting isn't like social media has it about just being permissive. It's not like, okay, honey, and getting this sweet, soft voice where you're just letting everything by. No, no problem, sweetie, and letting your child be the HKIC head kid in charge. No, it is about leading with intention, compassion, and long-term growth in mind. And so we can do away with the I have to narrow down my voice. I have to talk in these sweet, small, soft tones. And I'm not saying you have to, that yelling is part of gentle parenting, but I am saying that the soft, passive, permissive voice is not gentle parenting. We've confused the fact that it's gentle with meaning that we are soft. Gentle means compassionate and with intention, meaning that you have a goal and a focus in mind. Yes, you are parenting and you need your children to respect and comply with rules and boundaries and things like that, but you are also keeping in mind the compassionate factor, the intentionality, and the goal in mind. We are raising our children as they are adults to be those adults. And so focusing on that. We also have this thing called quick fix parent, what that I call quick fix parenting. And that is our things like yelling and bribing, and they may get immediate results. Like you've seen it where people are like, I've tried gentle parenting, and I'm like, honey, no, stop it right now. And then when you yell, like, get over here, then the kid responds really quickly. That is an immediate result or bribing. If you do this, if you quit crying, I'll buy you something. If you clean up your room, you'll get this. We've all done that because that's the quick thing to do, to get an immediate result, but it often causes long-term damage. Yes, we got what we wanted immediately, but are we thinking about long-term? Are we thinking about the growth mind long-term? And have we thought it through? If something, if we're trying not to get our child or we need our child to listen, have we intentionally set up the environment for them to be successful? So gentle parenting does shift our focus from punishment to provision. This means planning for success from the start. And so when you make rules and guidelines, set up systems where your child can actually succeed and not wait until they don't succeed or they fail to punish them. And understanding that they're not perfect either. So when they do make mistakes and they do fail, you are there to be able to guide them and help them navigate along the way. And of course, there's going to be times that you have spoken to your child and you have said, when you do this or if you do this, this is the consequence. And definitely, gentle parenting is not do not consequence your children, but you have set up the system beforehand so that you have put them in place for success. And of course, kids are kids. And you were one too. You're going to push the limits and break rules, but you have also set up the system. You have set up the environment for them to succeed. So you have the success in mind and not the punishment. And so you're still stern but you have guidelines. And though it's not that soft, passive talking. So if this so you're thinking, I would think like if this sounds so easy, like why does gentle parenting feel so hard? And here's the thing. Most of us weren't raised with these methods, right? I know I wasn't. We grew up in households where discipline was about control and not connection for the most part. And so when we try to parent differently, it's like learning a new language. Unless you are of a younger generation and your parent has mastered or not master because again we're not perfectionists, but has been operating under the gentle parenting, then you will gravitate towards that maybe for your children. But for the most part, this has not been something that's easy throughout now history where psychologists and other professionals are looking at the long-term effects of this. Like my generation, we're looking at, oh, what are some of the damages that have happened from our childhood, some of the trauma that has happened. Now we're looking at, okay, maybe there needs to be a shift in the mindset and the shift of how we parent. And so we need to look more for the connection and understand that children are people, they're not property. And so when we try to parent differently, it's like learning a new language. And then we add chaos of real life, right? Like jobs, stress, a meltdown in the grocery store or before getting out the door for school. And it is no wonder why gentle parenting feels like a constant uphill battle. But the truth of the matter is, it's not that gentle parenting doesn't work, it's that there are barriers that we haven't tackled, we haven't uncovered yet. And that's what we're about to unpack today. So I do want to repeat, gentle parenting isn't about being permissive. It's about leading with intention, compassion, and long term growth in mind. Quick fixes for parenting may get you immediate results. Put that down right now. Don't do that, scream or whatever. But we need to shift our focus from punishment to provision and planning for success from the very start. All right, so let's take a look here and let's see as we just continue to dive in a little bit deeper. So, I want to talk about why gentle parenting seems or feels like it doesn't work. And it's not because it's ineffective, um, but because it's more because of our brains, and our children's brains are wired to resist change. So it's not that the twos or the gentle parenting is just like, oh yeah, I'm going to bypass that. That's not true. That doesn't really work. Again, I've tackled, the social media tag on like what gentle parenting is, and it's not the soft, passive, permissive voice of being soft and just letting your kids run all over you. That's not what it is. But the reason why we feel like it doesn't work is because our brains are the way our brains are wired, and familiarity feels safe even when it's not beneficial. So before we just break all of this down, let me say this. If you struggled with gentle parenting, it's not because you're a bad parent. I want you to say that to yourself. If I struggled with gentle parenting, it's not because I'm a bad parent. There are real biological, emotional, and societal reasons why this feels challenging. And like I mentioned, I am going to tackle some of the science behind it, being having a science background. So here I want to give you 5 barriers um, to big barriers to gentle parenting and why our children reject it. One is the brain loves familiarity. Other is and we'll unpack all of these, but the unfamiliar, can say that word, the unfamiliar um, feels like a threat. And fear of failure keeps us stuck, and social conditioning and identity really get in the way. And then, of course, there are neurological patterns that make changes hard. So these barriers aren't excuses. Sometimes people will say, even from the old school, oh, you're just making excuses. No, these are not excuses. These are obstacles that we're going to learn how to navigate, and we're going to unpack them together. Anything that is worth working for is going to be a challenge and it's going to be difficult, but that does not mean that you shouldn't do it. So let's go ahead and break down these different barriers. So now, for the brain loves familiarity. Have you ever wondered why you keep doing the same things, even when they don't work? Like, blame your brain. It loves things that are familiar. Psychologists call this cognitive fluency, which just means is a fancy term for familiar things feel easy to process, safe, and less stressful. You don't have to put a whole lot of thought into it. So you ever see a kid walking around with their shoes untied? It's like automatic. I don't know if the system went down. Okay, there we go. This connection issue. I'm not really sure what's going on, but we're going to continue. So, what I was saying was, give an example about a kid walking around with their shoes untied. I know, being in education and just having a young one, you look and you're like, tie your shoe. Like, how can you not feel that your shoe's untied? Like, why does that not bother you? This is the same thing. Like, think about the first time you tied your shoe. Like, trying to tie it, it just becomes so it's a new thing. It's a new thing to do. So you rather just not. It's easier to just not have it tied, and it doesn't bother you. Another example might be you keep using the same discipline techniques you grew up with, even if they didn't serve you. Like, you didn't want to be yelled at, but yet we still find ourselves yelling at our children because they feel like second nature. And to do, and for that, you get a little bit of dopamine every time you go back to what you know, and boom, your brain has now been hooked on the comfort zone. Now, dopamine is the it's like the good feeling neurotransmitter that just gets produced to your sent to your brain whenever something happens fun or good. Like, maybe you see someone that you love, then you have that type. Dopamine is a hit. If you've done something that just make you feel happy and euphoric, watch the show, laugh, so you continue to do whatever your brain gets that dopamine for. And then a side note, just like our ADHD children, they will do whatever gives them that dopamine, whether, and even if it's things that get on your nerves. It's not that they want to get on your nerves, it's just that their brains biologically enjoy it. And so the same thing with this, anything that feels second nature gives your brain that dopamine, which then you're back to that routine. Your brain is hooked on that comfort zone. And so I'll break this down even a little bit more. Well, I'll say more about that in just a moment. The kicker to this is, what's comfortable isn't always what's good. Now, and we know that. And even though we know it, we still do something different. And that means that it's not always comfortable to do something that feels good. Sometimes it's comfortable to do something that feels good. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I am not sure why the internet is doing a thing, but we're going to push through. All right. Hopefully the internet stays stable. I'm not sure what's going on. We're not having bad weather. But anyway, so going to our second reason why it becomes difficult. Um, your brain sees change as a threat. Like, when you think about that, you're like, yikes, why? But because way back in caveman times, right? If you were around Okay, y'all pray for me. I'm not sure what is going on with this internet connection. I have not had any issues up until now. But anywho, your brain registers emotions and times a berry could have been seen as poisonous. An animal, you would have seen that as, it could eat you, it could kill you. And so your brain learn to avoid new things to survive. And so if we fast forward to today, um, that same wiring is still there. Even when something like gentle parenting is good for you and your family, your brain can be like, nope, danger, danger, I'm out of here, danger ahead. And when your brain senses a threat, even a made up one, it activates stress mode, fight, fight, or flawn. Like there was an example of a time where I was going to Walgreens to get some toilet paper, and what I perceived to be a rat hanging out of the garbage can and quickly jetted back to my car was actually a plastic bag. My brain said rat, my body said flee. We were not going to have toilet paper that night. But then my brain processed and said, oh, wait, that's a plastic bag. And so that same thing, it's unfamiliar. So I don't want anything to do with it. So when your brain activates in stress mode, that's when you start second guessing. That's when you start overthinking. That's when you start retreating back to old habits. But here's the truth in this, what feels risky isn't actually risky. It's just new. And the new is where growth happens. And so you got to stick with it. Our next one is fear of failure and the comfort zone trap. So let me just keep this real, real. Trying something new is hard, especially when it feels like the stakes are high. What if I fail? Remember, we're talking about connection over perfection. What if my child doesn't respond? What if it gets worse before it gets better? And it probably will. Here's what happens we avoid that discomfort by running straight back into the comfort zone, thinking, at least I know how to handle that. And sure, chaos might not be ideal, but it's familiar. You've already got a mental game plan for surviving it. But parenting isn't about surviving. It's about thriving. And thriving means letting go of that fear of failure and trusting the process, even if it's messy at first. And it will be. You got to navigate through that mess because both you and your child are adjusting to something new. So failure isn't the enemy here. It's actually part of the journey. You're going to have a lot of trial and error in this process. And then lastly, the last barrier that we'll tackle and we'll look at is the self-identity and the social conditioning. Well, let's talk about how we see ourselves. For a lot of us, the way we were parented shaped who we are, good, bad, or ugly. And I am not knocking how my parents raised me or how yours raised you. They may have done the best they could with the tools and the information that they had. But when you know better, you do better. So this is your chance, your tool, your information for you to do better. If you were raised with tough love or quick fix parenting, it can feel like you're betraying your roots by doing something different, or you're knocking your parents saying they didn't do a good job. That's why you're trying something different. And that's the contrary. Then there's the noise from society. Things like gentle parenting doesn't work, or I know you've heard this one. I've turned out fine. Listen, this is more than just tradition or pride. It is about questioning whether what's been passed down to you, intentionally or unintentionally, is helping or hurting. Breaking cycles is tough because it feels like you're breaking part of yourself. This is what you've learned, but you're not. You're building something better. Your child um, needs this. You need this. And so you're building something better for you, your family, and your child. And that takes real strength. You have to do what is best for you and your family, what is best and what works for you and your family. And keep that in mind connection over perfection. All right. So here we go. So overcoming resistance, breaking through this resistance requires a couple of things. It requires awareness, intentional actions, starting small, reframing your challenges as growth opportunities, and celebrate every win. And so when you look at this, one, you now are aware because you've had this information. And so now it's going to highlight in your brain of, all right, now I'm aware that there needs to be change. I need to just take small steps. Don't try to take all this in whole because then you will feel like a failure. You will feel like you can't do it because you're trying to implement immediate large changes. You got to take it step by step. What's the one thing you can tackle? When I was a principal, we did observation and feedback, and the things that we were looking at and helping teachers as I coached them through being their best in teaching was, let's look at the highest leverage. What's the one thing that we can look at in small bite size? And that one thing could be the culminating thing that overflows and fixes the other things that we didn't, that we needed to fix. And so we're looking for the highest leverage thing. What's the one thing that you can focus on that may actually be able to address other small things? Reframing your challenges as growth opportunities. That's my jam right there. Like I'm reflecting on, okay, what was the lesson I can learn in this? The other day, my cousin messaged me and she locked her keys in the car. Her car wouldn't start because the light was left on, and then the person who came and got her locked their keys. And that all sounds horrible. And you're like, this made for a crazy day. But later on, I asked her, like, if you sit back for a moment and you just reflect on the day that you had, was there any areas of growth opportunity or things that you could look at on like a reason why this may have happened, or what can you learn from this? And that's what this is about too. When our children are acting haywire or they're not responding to our parenting or our rules and regulations, then looking at, okay, what's the growth in this? And then celebrating your win. Like, for instance, a big win that some people may think is crazy. I do not like whining. Whining is not my jam. Like, that is not my divine calling. And I don't think any parent does. But I say this to switch your mindset. If your child comes to you with a complaint, which seems unreasonable, or they're whining about something, instead of getting frustrated with that, flip that around for a moment and look at, you know what? And because you think sometimes you're like, you don't do this in school. You've set up an environment where your child feels comfortable enough to be authentic, transparent in themselves to tell you what's wrong. They don't do it in school because that environment is not one that allows them to be that transparent. Now, some may, but as far as coming to you with certain things, so celebrate that as a win for you. Good job, mom. You was able to create an environment, but now you look at, okay, how can I now reframe this challenge as a growth opportunity for me and my child? We don't say we're going to set this up to be a whine zone or a cry zone or a complaint zone. Absolutely not. Maybe it's all right, we're going to have, once a week, a complaint moment, 5 minutes. You spill out all your complaints, and then we can get that out of our system. And now we can see how we can move from this. I don't know. You figure out what works best for your home, but that is a freebie. You can use that one. And that takes away from your frustration of, oh my God, not again. And now you're yelling like, I don't want to hear your complaints. You're so ungrateful. All of those things, because we all have them. Look at your child as human because you are too. All right. So, is it worth the work? You tell me. When you push past these barriers, you create parenting environments that feel less like a battleground and more like a safe space, like I just mentioned with the complaining. And it feels safe for everyone. Just the moment before we had this session, my daughter told me she participated in a challenge at lunch of eating hot sauce packets. My brain immediately went forward, fast forward. And I was like, don't eat hot sauce. Don't do that. And then you're in the classroom and you're acting all crazy or tripping out or whatever. And now the teacher's messaging me about why. I immediately went to that. And then as I walked away and I thought about it for a second, I said, wait, that was a part where she was sharing a moment for me for her school day. Let me go back. Let me reframe that. And I came back and I apologized, like, hey, I'm sorry. I tripped really quickly. But tell me more about this challenge. What did the hot sauce packets look like? Oh, was it hot? Was all of the things, and really was able to spend that moment and engaging with her. And that's shifting it from a battleground to a more safe space. Because I thought when I walked away, oh, wait, if I react like that for something that small, is she going to come to me later and tell me something larger? I might want to double back on that and think about forward thinking of growth for that instead of that quick fix. And so, is it worth it? Fewer power struggles, more cooperation without constant nagging, and a deeper connection with your child that lasts well into their adult years. Like I mentioned, I have three children, two adult children, and my 10-year-old who's still at home. And it brings me great joy when my older children, my adult children, they come home because they want to. One of them lives out of state and one of them lives in state. But they come when they come home because they want to. So when my daughter drives across states to come see me because she wants to and not because she has to, that's joy. And I want that same thing for my 10-year-old when she gets to be their age, when she no longer has to come home. And it's the biggest thing I want to just impress here. It's not about fixing your child. There is nothing in there where you can go online and it's like, all right, what's a good fix? How do I fix it? Because then that focuses on perfection and not connection. It is really, though, about creating an environment where they can thrive, where you can thrive too. And that's what makes this effort all worth it. It's the connection that you will have with your children. And so let's get into some good stuff. These are the tools um, for you. You don't need a magic wand or an endless patience. So this is the portion that you've all been waiting for as we start to come closer to an end of this session. But you don't need a magic wand for endless patience. As a matter of fact, when you ask for patience, you're going to be put into situations that's going to help you to develop it. And that's a good thing. Like patience is the fruit of the spirit. And although it doesn't feel good, that's the process. It is still the good thing, right? You want patience, but you can't get it if you haven't learned how to navigate through it. So what you need are strategies that actually work in the real world. Like all of this stuff that I can say can be great, but if I leave you with nothing, then it was worth nothing. And so just giving you some real time strategies that you can apply immediately. Again, small bite size. So here are some tools that you can implement right away. And they're simple, effective, and designed to really create immediate positive change in your parenting journey. And so the first one is pause and reframe. Now, when your child is spiraling, pause before reacting. And I know sometimes you feel like that's not doable because you got to do something quick. That's that quick fix parenting. Gentle parenting means that you're intentional. And so you're pausing before reacting because that quick fix parenting means that you need to assert your control, assert your authority, and now you're focusing on control over connection. And so stopping for a moment, asking yourself, what's really going on here? Remember, you're the adult. You are the adult, so you can assess the situation a lot larger. Did they get to bed on time last night? Or did they stay up later? Did you have an event the night before where they didn't get enough sleep and now they're reacting to the fact that they don't have enough sleep? Now you can address that. Or you can address the moment because realizing they're not even being in their right mind because they are tired, And so instead of now going into a power struggle, so when your child is like in full meltdown mode, your instinct might really be to jump in and stop the chaos. But the thing with that is reacting immediately usually escalates the thing. So instead, try this. Pause for a moment and reframe what's happening. Ask your child, what's really going on here? Because then that stops them as well to reframe and think. And so you're putting an example out for them. Your child is screaming because they don't want to clean their room. So instead of yelling back, pause, think, are they overwhelmed by the mess? I mean, put yourself in that situation. Is this about the room or is it about something else? Then say something like this. I don't know. Hey, I know cleaning your room feels like a big job. Let's start with picking up the books. I'll help you by guiding you on what to do next. They may not know, all right, where do I start? How do I do it? And you're thinking, you should know how to clean your room. You messed it up. It's your room, all of the things, but they may need some guidance. So now they just feel overwhelmed. And so that has resulted in a meltdown. And now you're frustrated, they're frustrated, and nothing's getting done. And you've severed a relationship through that moment as opposed to building a connection by helping them process what the real problem is. So reframing gives you a chance to approach the situation calmly and figure out the real issue. It's a small shift that makes the big difference. It's not giving your child power and being passive, but it's you taking control and being intentional about the situation because you're the adult. All right, lead with empathy. A simple, I see you're upset, can completely shift the energy of a conflict. Although you can physically see it and you not saying anything, that doesn't tell your child that you actually see them. People want to be seen, heard, and understood. And by people, I mean your child too, you too. And so empathy is like a magic reset button in parenting. When you validate your child's feelings, because again, people don't care what you know until they know that you care, you instantly diffuse tension. Now, it doesn't calm them down immediately, but it does kind of diffuse because now you're looking like, oh, wait, you want to know, like, wait, you see me? And it opens the door for connection over perfection. So let's say your child is furious because you turned off the TV instead of saying, you've had enough screen time, get over it, try something like this. You know, I know you were really into that show and it's hard to stop when you're enjoying something. I get it. I get it. But we have to stick to our screen time rules. Even setting up something before, remember I said setting up the environment. So before saying, hey, what time is how much time do we have for our screen time? Maybe it's 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Okay, so at the 30-minute mark, I'm going to turn the TV off. I'll set a timer so that you hear the timer to let you know. I'll set a timer for 5 minutes before the 30 minutes so that you're prepared and knowing the time the will go off. And let's say they still have a meltdown afterwards. That's when you implement the, hey, I know you really like your show. I love good shows too. It's really hard to stop when you're enjoying something, but we really got to stick to our routine and our rules. Power struggle, not there. You sternly said what you had to say. You were compassionate. You were intentional. And we move on from there. Now, if they cry about it, let them cry. You would be upset if you didn't get your way too. They're human. So let them cry through it. Sometimes we just have to endure the moment of the cry. It too shall pass. That's gentle parenting, not trying to whoop them out of crying or punish them out of crying. Just acknowledging their feelings without immediately jumping to correction helps them to feel seen and heard. And really, a child who feels heard is more likely to listen to you. So the next time it happens, again, in that moment may not be the moment that it clicks automatically. It's a process. And so the next moment may be the moment where the brain has developed the pathway to processing what's going on. Regulation routines that kind of bunched up there. Sorry, guys. But build consistent routines that give your child a sense of security. Like kids thrive on predictability. I learned this through education and parenting. They give the teacher who is, flimsy flopsy with her rules and everything. And they're like, all of the problems. And then the classroom where there's structure, and I had this structure class, like, why don't they ever give you rules? Because they come in here, they know what's expected. It's predictability. Remember, I said your brain gravitates towards what's familiar. We know what to expect there. And so, especially our kids with ADHD or high emotions, creating routines help them to regulate their nervous system. And it really does give them a sense of security. As much as they don't seem like they have routines because they're still learning, having them or coming into a space that has them certainly does give them the security. So instead of chaos in the morning, create a visual checklist. This could be something like, in the bathroom or on their door in their room, brush your teeth, get dressed, eat breakfast, grab your backpack so they know what to expect. And there's nothing thrown in the mix. I have a chart on my daughter's door that lays out every day what's happening, like what's expected of her throughout the day. Now, some days repeat, but I still repeat them on that day so she understands and sees and knows what happens. I don't have to remind her. I don't have to nag her. She knows what's there. Now, you say life is not all routine like that. So, life sometimes changes. Yep, I get that. And so I set up a system that also helps with that as well. Remember, I'm being proactive and setting up an environment for thriving, not being reactive to for punishment for when she doesn't succeed. So we also have a slip on there that's a schedule change. Now, there may be a Tuesday or a Wednesday where it's not going to follow that schedule. I may have an event or something going on, or she has something, or we have something that we're doing, company coming in. I don't know what the day is going to look like. So I put schedule change on there. So she understands we don't really know what the day's going to look like, but we know because there is a schedule change that helps her brain to regulate. I can't have certain expectations of the day because it'll change, but it still gives her a sense of security because she is aware that there is a schedule change. It didn't just get thrown in there. Now, of course, there are times when things just happen. And so we have those types of conversations ahead of time that sometimes there may be things that just happen that I can't prepare you for. How can we react to those things as well? And so, again, trying to set her up for success and not being reactive for a failure. And if she does, have a meltdown or have a moment or whatever, because we all do when things change and life doesn't go the way that we planned or expected it, we deal with it in that moment and we understand again where's the opportunity for growth. How can we look at this challenge for a growth opportunity and reflect on some things that we can implement later? So if this happens again, we can be prepared in how we process it and how we navigate this through success. And again, it's about connection and not the perfection. It's not that we're going to get it always right, but we're going to be always intentionally focused on that. And so you can even make things fun, like using stickers, magnets, or letting them check off things. She has a chore chart. And so instead of having the same chore, she now has a chart and there's a push pin that she puts in it. And now she has control over that. For evenings, like at night time, you can build time for decompressing, bath to calm their senses, and then 10 minutes of one-on-one time with you and your child to talk about their day. My daughter thrives on cuddle time. If we don't get that, like her day is out of whack. So I have to like tell her if it's not going to happen. But she also needs time. Yeah, you've all heard things like, oh, when your child is fine, like, oh, they're gonna be exhausted. No, not for an ADHD child because their wheels are constantly turning. And so they need time to let their engine rev down. And so having them come in at the time that they got to take a bath and go to bed, eat and go to bed may not be the thing for them. For my daughter, it's come in, eat, have some downtime, take a shower, we talk, and now she's able to come down from all the excitement that she was just having for the most part. Now, some days that just doesn't happen and we have to navigate through that. Um, but a consistent routine, consistent bedtime, a favorite story, something like that that's consistent. These routines really do create an anchor for their day and helps to prevent these outbursts that come from feeling overwhelmed or out of control. Think about it for you. All right. Another practical tool is repair, don't punish. If you mess up, and you will, circle back to repair the relationship. I have a friend that always says it's not what you do, it's what you do after. Just think about the example I gave when I flipped that quick on a challenge that my daughter did. I had to go back and think, oh, again, I'm looking at a relationship for the future. There may be something that happens a little bit more significant that she's not going to tell me because I flipped about some hot sauce. Let me go back and really engage in that moment because that was a moment of fun for her. I was a kid before. And so let's be honest, we all lose our cool sometimes. We're human. You're human. You're going to yell. You're going to make mistakes. Have moments you wish that you could take back. That's going to happen. And what matters is what you do after. So maybe you yelled at your child for spilling their milk or their drink, or when you were already stressed out. Later, pull them to the side and say, hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I yelled at you earlier. I was feeling really overwhelmed. You know how sometimes you get overwhelmed and, I was feeling like that, but that's not an excuse. Spilling your drink wasn't a big deal and I should have acted better. I'll try to do better next time. Do you forgive me? And maybe they might say, no, I don't forgive you. And that's their right. They don't have to. But then children are very resilient. They typically will. But then try not to make that a habit of going off the deep end, but at least tells your child that you're being intentional and focusing on your well-being, and you're focusing on how you behave and how you act. And that set an example for them to be able to do the same. They see that you're human, you're going to make mistakes. And so it helps them to see themselves as human and make mistakes, but then double back and apologizing to make changes. And that has been, consistent through my parenting. And so when you repair, you're showing your child how to own mistakes and model accountability. That is one of my core values in TL Collaborative is accountability, really being intentional about how you design a space for others to thrive. So you're being accountable for that. And it really also reinforces trust. They know that you're on your side even when things go wrong. You're not going to throw them to the wolves. All right. Last two. Well, that was the last two. And so here they all are: pause and reframe, lead with empathy, regulation, routines, and repair, don't punish. Small changes like these really add up, creating a more peaceful and connected home. Small wins build big change. This is important to hear. Don't underestimate the power of small change. Gentle parenting isn't about flipping a switch. It's really about stacking little wins over time. So, for example, start with one habit. One habit this week. A habit becomes a way of life. That's my motto. Maybe it's pausing before you respond or adding a bedtime story to your routine and sticking to it. As this becomes second nature, add another. Once you've gotten that and it became your routine, then add on another. Don't try them all at once. When you focus on progress instead of perfection, you'll start to notice the shift. It's not really about being a perfect parent, it's about creating small moments of connections every day. Get this perfection thing out of your mind if it's there. Alrighty. So we've covered a lot today, right? We've covered barriers, we've covered solutions and tools, and you can start using these tools immediately. Remember, I said start small. But here's the thing: transformation does not happen overnight. If you are ready to keep this momentum going, here's what you do next. Join me for our masterclass, our next masterclass called Thriving Through Faith, and that is on February the 4th. It's on a Tuesday at 7 p.m. You can join me there. You can register at the website, and I am dropping that in the chat. Um, and I think it's also on the screen as well. Another thing you can do if you're looking to dive deeper by joining our waitlist for From Chaos to Confidence, this is a parenting cohort. It's all about creating sustainable, thriving parenting systems tailored for you and your family. So having that consistent connection and that consistent change of mindset and development for you and your family. Feel free to join the waitlist so that you can get information for when the next session opens and that you can join there. I am dropping that in the chat as well. And so you'll find those links in the chat. You'll find them on my website. Feel free to navigate through my website and let's really start going at this together and thriving together. And then lastly, I do want to thank you all for joining today. Feedback is a gift. And so I really do appreciate your feedback as as you have joined in this journey. And so I am going to drop in the chat a feedback link for you to enter your feedback on how you would rate this session and any other information regarding future sessions that you may be interested in. But again, I do thank you so much for joining me today. I thank you for your time. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but I want to encourage you and keep thriving, keep showing up for your child, and keep showing up for yourself. Thanks again, and have a wonderful evening.